Welcome to the Clyde FC Podcast, brought to you by State of Mind. We are back once again, 2 weeks in a row for the first time this year in what feels like God knows how long. Returning once again, we have John Boyce from his Palace of Positivity. Boyce, how are you doing?
Aye, not too bad. The Palace is very positive tonight. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think we all are. And making a much demanded reappearance in the podcast, who ably stood in for Mr. Boyce a few weeks ago, is Dean McCurdy even. Dean, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Good to be back.
Good stuff. You can replace me at this rate because I'm just a mumbling mess. So, yes, for those of you that have been on our Twitter feed and social medias, you will be well aware, obviously, of our special guest tonight who will be joining us in a few minutes. First of all, we're going to just have a quick overview of this week's state of play, obviously with the current lockdown. Boyce, I know you've got a few things that you were wanting to raise that's come up this week.
Yeah, so it's just taken from the Clyde website. So if any of you haven't seen it, I'll just run through it just now. So there was a joint response update, and within that, they note that the First Minister's roadmap out of lockdown was outlined at Holyrood on Tuesday, obviously, as we all know. For the football side of it, they're awaiting further clarification from ministers regarding the implications at all levels for us, for Scottish football. And the wee quote is that they're committed to working with the government to ensure the national game is primed to return within the progressive easing timeline that was announced on Tuesday. So a further update to that, there was a wee conference today with Jason Leach, where he was asked what was happening with the Scottish lower leagues, which includes the women's game as well. So he really wants the women's game to come back as well as the Scottish lower leagues. He made that a point, which I think is very important. We can't forget the women's game as well. There's plans for training to commence soon, he had noted, and news will be coming very soon. They're having conversations over the weekend, and the quote they ended with was, he's hopeful some of that can restart soon, which was linked to the quote they had given. So what do you think of that, guys? Are we kind of in a positive mindset if it restarts soon? Do you think we could deal with that?
It's hard to see. I don't know. Obviously it'd be good to see the team back, but I don't know, we need everything to go right, and I don't know, it's hard to see. And I think the players are in a bit of limbo just now as well. Not just the Clyde players, but the players of every team. They're just desperate to know if we can start back or not.
Yes. So I think one of the good things will be it does seem to be coming soon. So there will be a line drawn under it whether we can do one thing or the other. But as I said last week, I think the season's got to be finished for me. I don't see part-time teams like us completing those amount of games in
no chance. It's too hard to ask for teams to play 3 games a week.
And I think one of the key messages, I think, in Danny's statement this week would mention the fact that it takes around a month for you to get back to your kind of peak condition, especially for part-time players. This isn't obviously their number one job. So that has to be a consideration here. So it could be much, much closer to April, if not already into April, before a ball is kicked in anger.
Absolutely. And what we discussed last week, Dean, me and Paul were thinking about getting our boots on and playing the midweek games. You're more than welcome to join.
Oh, yeah. I'll be there.
My God, we'll need all the talent we can get, because if they're calling upon me and Boyce, then the game's a bogey.
I think Dean will bring that level up a wee bit.
Considerably so. Anything else, sorry, Boyce?
Yeah, just one final thing. So the big thing from this week for me was a statement from the gaffer, Danny Lennon. So it's a decent-sized article, but I'll just pick out the key points. So it started by saying it's frustrating and disappointing to be out of action, and also that we've had a split between the top and bottom clubs, which raises questions about inequality again. So that's coming from Danny. I had said the same last week. It does seem strange from my point of view that the top 2 leagues can start back up and the lower leagues are just kind of left to fend. for themselves. So moving on, however, we do have to remember the circumstances that we're living in at the moment. People are suffering in various ways, and we know that the health service has been under huge pressure. And it goes on to say about the logistics of how we could play those games, and it'd be very difficult for part-time players. So just what we've kind of covered there. A positive is we have had a verbal agreement with Michael McGlinchey, who lower league fans will know very well. He's very experienced. He's got over 50 caps for New Zealand, which I think we need. I think we need that experienced midfielder to help out the younger boys. So that could be a very good thing when we do get back. And Danny also concluded with a message to everyone. So I'll read that in full. No matter what happens now, that's 2 seasons that have been interrupted, especially for the fans. If nothing else, let's not let this affect the 3rd season in 2021-22. Everyone's feeling this pandemic in some way, but I'm sure we'll all be together soon as a Clyde family. So keep looking after yourself and look forward to that day coming. So lovely words from Danny as always.
He's always lovely words.
Yeah, it's always puts a smile on my face. But
yeah, I think if Danny ever says something wrong in a statement, it'll be the day hell freezes over, I think. So yeah, I can only echo obviously the frustration, obviously that's etched in Danny's statement with the inequality, obviously the recent proposals or the proposed testing that the lower League 1 and League 2 were suggesting we would do, that didn't seem to get any kind of traction. So fingers crossed, this might just be that wee chink of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So
decisions made soon.
Yeah. Right, well, we move on here because I don't know about you guys, but I'm itching to get our guest on tonight.
Yeah,
now, this man needs little introduction to Clyde fans and to probably, sadly, if there's any watching, some Celtic fans too. I'm not going to do a verbal introduction because there is only one introduction this man needs, and it is as follows.
Well, this is thrilling. Ball comes in. A chance. Brilliant goal! Clyde 2, Celtic 0, and EDDIE Malone score.
We have the one and only EDDIE Malone joining us. Eddie, how are you doing?
I'm not bad. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Eddie. Fantastic. I don't know about you, but I can't get enough watching that goal. How many times have you watched it now?
I've lost count. Every year I get the same phone calls around about just after the new year. People saying they're an interview for the Scottish Cup ties with our Celtic and play to get a lower league team. And I'm always the guy they phone and say, "Oh, what was that like?" So, but I never get tired of seeing that.
No, absolutely. And we obviously will come to discuss the Celtic match probably in great depth. The comments and questions that will come in, I'm soon will follow that trait. But what we're looking to do is maybe do a wee bit more of a spotlight on the legends of the club. And like it or not, Eddie, you are in that bracket due to that goal. And not just that goal, you were a firm fan favourite, as evidenced last week when myself, Boise and Craig were compiling our all-time Clyde 11 from the times that we have been watching the Billy Reid. And I won't say who didn't have you in at left back. We'll move swiftly on from that. But Boise and Craig definitely did.
Paul, did you have any striker following that trait of?
Aye, well, let's just move on, mate. Let's move swiftly on. Yeah, so obviously you did make a Clyde fans 11, and I don't think there would be many disagreements with that. You were, as I said, a firm fan favourite. Now, just generally speaking, how do you remember your time at Clyde?
That was great. It was like it was strange. It was like 2 different seasons, wasn't it? Like the first time I came when I arrived, it was a sort of aging team, and then that summer, obviously, there was a lot of financial problems, and then the team completely changed. We brought in all these guys who'd been released from professional clubs, senior clubs, and it was just like night and day. Like the two teams were so different in terms of their style and their play, and I learned so much from both teams. The likes of Stuart Balmer, Dan Sheridan, Graham Jones, John Potter, Simon Menson, Bryn Halliwell, guys, stuff I learnt off them was like, looking back now was like second. Then I think Gary Bowman as well. And then obviously they all left, and then I became one of the oldest in the team, which was mad. Myself and Bryson were like the two oldest ones with Paul McHale. Had the most games under our belt. And it just completely changed over the summer. But I learned so much playing with both sets of players. It was an honour to play with them both.
Very, very different dynamics to both squads as well. What was it with that age discrepancy in there, did you feel?
Well, I think the first team that I played for, I think Billy Reid realised we didn't have there was no legs in the team. It was myself, Bryson and Ian Hartley that could run, Gary Arbuckle as well. And then the rest were just coming to the end of their career, really. Didn't have much legs about them. So we had to sit in and defend most of the game and then hit them on the counter attack. We used to just joke and say we'll just sit in and kick up to Ian Hartley, he can stick the ball in the net, we'll get 1-0 and get up the road. So that was how we played the first season, and it was the second season, completely different style, and we just had legs everywhere. So two different styles, but as I said, you learnt so much playing in both those teams, so it was great.
Can I just ask, what is it that made you want to stick around and see that second season? It would have been quite easy for you to sort of seek a new challenge or leave the club when it was in limbo. Was it an easy decision to stay? Because I think that's what made the fans like you even more, was the fact that you did stick around. So I think that probably sort of started your legendary status at the club.
It was it was a strange. I'm not gonna lie, it was a strange time. I was on holiday, and I remember texting Lee Bryson, like he was watching the trials and was like, "How is it going?" And he's like, "It's absolute chaos. There's like 100 players here. I don't know how we're going to get players out of this. Like, it's absolutely mental. There's only 2 hours left." And at that time, Hamilton at the time were wanting myself and Bryson to go, but I thought, I spoke to my dad and my agent at the time, and my agent was wanting me to hand in a transfer request, but I was like, I've never enjoyed it when I go and watch Hibs and players hand in transfer requests. It didn't really stick with me right, so I was happy to sit out and see how we went on after the trials. And like, I remember the first day of pre-season, like sitting in the changing room, there was like 45 players or something, and me and Bryson were sitting there like, what is going on here? But we slowly sort of managed to whittle it down, and we managed to get a good squad of players together. And I was looking going into the season, we played the friendlies and that, we played against like Motherwell, and we done all right, and it was a great bunch of guys as well. We're all the same age. I was enjoying it, and so I never really thought of going elsewhere. I had another year of my contract, and I was happy. And if the club wanted to sell me, then fine. But I was happy to see where we went with it. And as I said, it worked out brilliantly. So I've met a lot of mates. I'm still in touch with a lot of that team as well. And had a good season that year. And I played another sort of 20 years old. Played another 40 games that season. So it was great for me personally. Great for my development. And as I said, I'm still in touch with a lot of the boys now. And I wouldn't change anything.
Was there any big names who were at the trials but they didn't make the cut? Like, because I always remember reading about it at the time, and there was like Premier League players or people with Premier League experience who were coming down to the trials, but you never actually seen them signed for the club.
I'm honestly not sure. Honestly, one of the stories, you'll need to get Craig McEwen, and he says that there was a boy in goals with one arm at one point. So it was an open trial. So that's what we got fed back, and I was like, oh no. But most of the boys we signed came having been released from SPL teams that were just trying to prove a point. So I can never remember any big names coming in. It was all guys that were going to be playing for, not much money. We were all still sort of living with our parents, most of us. So we were just taking a chance at it and hoping to get a decent career and get ourselves on show and playing every week. And most of the boys went and done that. So all the boys will say the same as me. It was a great step for them, rather than playing reserve football at the age of 19, 20, to go and play, which is now the Championship, and learn your trade there. It was brilliant for all the boys, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would encourage if you were speaking to, say, an 18, 19-year-old boy, say, on the books at one of the top flight teams, is just to get out there and get that experience? Because it does make that difference to these boys. It's playing the man's game, quote unquote.
Definitely. And the difference in the pace, playing reserve games and then getting chucked into a Championship game. I've seen boys come on loan to us when I was at Forfar and playing in League Two, and some of them really struggled at the age of 18, 19 because they've only played reserve football. Speaking from that experience, I probably struggled the first 18 years old, and I had sort of 50 games under my belt by that time, 50, 60 games, so I was still learning. I think a lot of guys go out on loan and play a month, go back to their club, and then they sort of struggle a little bit. I think any young player that was at 19, 20, they need to start playing competitive football, because especially now with COVID, the reserve league's basically non-existent, so you're not getting games, and to chuck somebody into a game and expect them to just turn it on straight away, it's really difficult for them.
Yeah, and I think over the next few months, if the game gets the go-ahead, I doubt there'll be a lack of clubs looking for players to bulk out their squads, with pretty hectic schedules coming up. It's going to be, every club's trying to adapt it. It's just a really difficult time for everyone. It's just, you can't really plan for anything at the moment. I mean, there's this season now, you plan for a season and always knowing in the back of your head that at some point it was going to shut down. So we had the same problems. I'm at East Stirling just now, and we're in limbo now. We don't know when we're going to start, if we're going to start, and if we do, they're just going to chuck us in straight away and give us a week's notice and say, right, get back on the pitch again. And players will pick up injuries. So for a manager, it must be an absolute nightmare. I just don't know how you can plan for anything at the moment. You just need to take it day by day and see what happens. But it's all up in the air at the moment. Yeah.
Can I just say quickly, going back to before you joined, Clyde? I think it was a swap deal we got you in, wasn't it, from St Johnstone? I'm sure Kevin Fotheringham went the other way. Yeah. And I think that's probably the best bit of business I've seen Clyde do in my lifetime, is Fotheringham and get EDDIE Malone in.
That's harsh on Kev. He was not bad. He was all right. But it dragged on a bit. I was meant to go the first time. It was It was going to be cashed to Clyde, and Ian Harty was going to go to St Johnstone.
Was it?
And that fell through at the last minute. And then Billy Reid just kept trying to get me over to Clyde, and was offering, and St Johnstone said, well, we'll take Kevin Fotheringham, and then that's how the deal went through. So I think
no transfer.
No. I'm like, I just crack on and see what happens. No.
I know Ian Harty was a cracking player, just absolute legs on him.
Goals.
Yep. I know, goals. My first kind of big striker watching them as well when I was watching Clyde.
When I call Ian Harty a big striker, I know.
Well, you know what I mean. Aye. So we've got a first few questions of the night. Just encourage everyone that's watching to put your questions to Eddie. So Ryan Kyle's got a couple. First of all, Eddie, what was your highlight at Clyde other than the win against Celtic? And then following that, what are the best players you played with at Clyde? Defence, midfield and striker. So Ryan's asking.
What you put me on the spot there?
That's a loaded question.
I'd say one of the highlights was reaching the Challenge Cup final, which we should have won. We got beat at Ross County on penalties. Getting there and seeing all the Clyde fans up there was what a crowd it was that day. Being 5 minutes away from beating Rangers at Ibrox that season, we were fairly comfortable until an error cost us. They were great times. and now I've got to pick. Well, I'm going to get in trouble here. I've got to pick a defender, a midfielder, and a striker.
Aye.
Oh God. I'd say defender was probably John Potter. He was so vocal on the pitch and organising, and technically, he'll tell you he wasn't great, but he just knew where to be and he'd organise everybody. Especially when I was that age, it was great to have somebody behind you talking to you all the time, telling you where to be. Midfielder, you can't even see that he passed Craig Bryce in. Bryce was what careers he had. Remember the first couple of weeks of training, just watching him, seeing him glide with the ball and the engine he had on him. He just knew he was going to go on to bigger things. I trained once with Kareem Kerker, who was
the legend.
He was one of the honestly, one of the guys you just like didn't go near him in training, just stay away from him and get somebody else to mark him because he'll just take it. He was class. And then strikers, in terms of like goal scorers, Ian Harty was obviously rattled in the goals. Alex Williams' goal scoring record was incredible, and then Tom Brighton was class for us that season as well, getting us up the pitch and running the channels. But if I had to pick one, it probably can't see past Ian Harty's finishing in that season we played. We relied so much on him in terms of goals and that. I'd probably have to say Ian Harty for up top. I'm going to get loads of texts now getting pelters. Cheers for that, Pale.
Right, boys, is that all the questions so far? Yep.
Aye, Ryan's just saying thanks for the great memories growing up watching Clyde, and I think most Clyde fans would kind of echo that as well. So,
no, yeah. Absolutely. Now, Dean touched upon obviously that you started your professional career at St Johnstone. Just going to quickly jump just before that and look kind of back on your youth career. Now, when I was doing my extensive research, which absolutely was not Wikipedia, I read up that you played alongside at youth level Scott Brown and Aidan McGeady. Is that correct, or is that nonsense?
I played with Scott, right. Not Aidan McGeady, because he was he went to the Irish set up at a young age. But I played with Scotty for a wee while, Scotland under 18s.
So, who would win in a 50-50? Yourself or Scott Brown?
I've always backed myself.
I know you would, Eddie. That's why I wanted to ask you. And I don't think a Clyde fan would disagree with you. I think we said last week that when there was a 50-50 ball, you would come out with the ball and or a yellow card. And I think that's what the Clyde fans loved. There was no lack of obviously skill, and the bombing down the left wing was fantastic. But yeah, I think it was that complete heartedness on the pitch. You gave your absolute everything, and I think that's what really endeared yourself to the Clyde fans. So yeah, that was a nice wee golden nugget. I thought that I'd throw out there, especially since our producer in the background is a big Celtic fan. So just to twist the knife that we've got yourself on, Eddie, got me throwing that video as well. I would just stick that one out there as well.
He's having a hard time in the
well, things might be getting better, but we'll focus on the good, Lennon, as well a wee bit later on. So, yeah, Dean obviously touched upon that you were part of a swap deal for when you moved to Clyde. You touched obviously upon your first season. You then obviously mentioned the infamous X Factor trials, and it was quite interesting that you discussed what it was like being on that other side, because I think everyone really focused on the fact that these happened and they were mad. I don't think a single club has ever done it since, or likely to. Was it, as you put it was just chaos? Or was there a degree of structure to it?
There was a little bit. Like, I know that they had players in their mind who they wanted to sign. They obviously went after, I think Stephen O'Donnell was one that they wanted to get in. Paul McHale was another one they wanted to get in. But the rest, it was all open trials. But they were always speaking to the clubs who had released them. So the likes of like Chris Higgins, they knew that that he was a decent pro and he was a good player and he could go and play at that level. So they were always chatting to managers that had let these players go and asking about them. So it wasn't just a case of, it was everyone just turn up, but they had an idea, I think, of who they wanted to bring in. And then if they could get the odd gem that came along with the trial, then they'd done that. But as I said, the squad, we ended up just a lot of players at that time. The first training session, there was like 35 to 40 players training, all on trial. Whereas the season before, we were training with like, we'd be lucky if sometimes we could get 5 aside with injuries and that. So it was like chalk and cheese. Like on Monday morning, the season before, we were with, because it was an older team, a lot of them wouldn't train on the Monday. So it was a case of like there was like something 8 or 9 hours training, and then you flip that to the other side and come in for pre-season, and it was like, it was, to be honest, I think there was a time when it was 20v20 on a half pitch doing possession. And it was just carnage, just boys obviously trying to impress and just smashing into each other. And me and Bryson were standing there like, what's going on here? But to be fair to Graham Robertson Joe, they slowly, bit by bit, started to get the squad together, and you could see that they were putting something together that was going to be half decent. It was going to be decent, that we could compete.
I think Paul summed it up. It was unprecedented, like to have all these trials, and you're thinking, should clubs do the trials? I mean, you've got all the young talent there. If they're good enough and they've got the hunger to want to better their careers, then, you know, look at that Clyde team, what they did to Celtic, and the famous line in the commentary, they're playing with no fear.
Why not?
Yeah.
It's happened. Well, we're a good example of it working, and if no one's done it since, you've got to question why not?
I was expecting like 10 clubs to do it the next season, just sign hundreds of boys. So we've got a question. Sorry, Eddie, on you go.
So I was saying, some of these part-time teams that are paying good part-time wages, and you could get a group of young players that have just been released from clubs and go full-time and give it a crack. But I'm the same as you. I'm quite surprised that nobody's done it since, and nobody's really tried it since. It was a sort of shot in the dark, but it sort of worked for us, so I'm quite surprised that nobody else has done it, to be honest.
So we've got a question from Ross Parker, which is moving on a wee bit in the timeline. So what did the players think about the Billy Reid situation? And Ross is saying your free kick, Eddie, against Hamilton was the most he's ever celebrated a goal. It was a belter. The Billy Reid situation was obviously quite strange. We'd heard that he was going to Hamilton, but we weren't sure of exactly what was happening. He told us that he wasn't going, and then obviously it happened. And then all that team was out of contract, and we still had like 3 games left of the season or something. So obviously he was trying to get a lot of those players to go over to Hamilton at the time. So I was 19 at the time, so you sort of take it in your stride and you just go on with it. But looking back now, if I was a bit older, I'd be like this is bizarre, like what's actually happening here. Especially to finish second that season. And we've sort of been in the title race until the last couple of weeks. That he then, to go over to Hamilton, who were part-time at the time, obviously they were throwing money at it, and that's what got Billy over there. But it was, looking back now, it was quite bizarre. But again, we were lucky that we had so many experienced players to handle it. And Stuart Balmer stepped in and took the team for the last few games and sort of kept everyone's focus. But looking back now, it was quite strange, and we just had to stay professional and crack on as best we could. Yeah, there was a lot of top 4 finishes as well. Like, imagine what we could have done if there was the playoffs, which came in a few years later. So.
I know. I think I finished second in that championship about 9 times, and then the playoffs got introduced. I was like, didn't get a crack at that, honestly.
Sorry, Dean, were you about to ask something there?
I was just going to say that free kick as well. I remember that really well. Remember everyone going mad? And I was also reading that. I think it was only 3 goals that you scored for Clyde in your career. Is that correct? Obviously, one against Celtic.
3 fantastic
goals for left back.
It genuinely seemed more. Like, it seemed more. The other one was also. I was on the website and it was you opened the scoring in a 5-1 win against Brecon. It was a 16-yard strike after Stevie O'Donnell hit the wall with a free kick. Must only been good goals.
There's only 3, so I do remember all 3 of them.
That seems more. It generally seems you scored more.
So, Boise, I think there's another really good.
The Hamilton one.
Oh, sorry. On you go, Eddie. On you go.
Sorry, I was just going to say the Hamilton one. I remember I was playing crap and Joe was ready to take me off just before that free kick. And Bob Harris was ready to come on. Then we got that free kick and he said, "Leave him on the now and see what happens." And I obviously scored and then he left me on. But I remember I was playing shocking. And I was frustrated and I just thought I'd just put my foot through this. And thankfully it went in. And I stayed on the pitch for the rest of the game, thankfully.
Peach. Absolute peach.
Right. Stuart Ross has a fantastic question. So when you approached Roy Keane at the end of the game, Eddie, what did you say to him? I mean, my first reaction was I just simply asked him who he was.
When did you come on?
I asked for his strip. Went straight to him. He was obviously one of my heroes growing up. Used to love watching him. Just the way his business was class. So I went to get his strip and he says to me, "We can get up the tunnel." And I've just done a U-turn and started celebrating with the boys and I've never seen him again. So I don't know where that strip's went or what's happened to it.
But you wouldn't change it for the world though, Eddie. Celebrating, obviously, the post-match, which we will come to in great detail. Any other questions? I don't think. A couple of comments. Greg Livingstone saying that you're the best player Clyde has ever had. So there you go. Praise indeed.
So you been drinking?
No comment. And our producer in the background, Paul, has said that it was a cracking goal, which of course it was. Now, 2005-2006 season in general, you mentioned obviously the youthfulness of the squad. I think Joe Miller was registered as a player, fleetingly used. He was probably double the age of at least 90% of the normal starting 11. I think that's kind of testament to just how youthful it was. The football that we could play at times was frightening because we just overran teams, and it was through fitness. But we had some phenomenal players in there. You had obviously Bryso, you had yourself down the left wing, you had Mikey McGowan going down the other flank. It was a great time to be a Clyde fan. And yeah, we were, 5th, I think, by the end of that season. But when you look at that over the piece, it was a fantastic watch.
As I said, it was 2 different styles. It was a team that, if you were a young player, you just loved playing, and we were all fearless. And we were encouraged to go out and play like that. Just go out and get on the ball, try and start from the back. And play through midfield, but at the same time spin it in behind at times because we knew most teams would be a bit older than us, and we knew Tam and Alex Williams could cause them problems. So I honestly we really all enjoyed playing in that team, and as I said, I've met some great friends that I'm still in touch with. We try and catch up at least once or twice a year for a couple of beers, and that was one of the things that Joe and Graham Roberts were key in. They made sure that during pre-season we were all going out together, so we all got to know each other, so if we never knew anybody or that, so they were key in making sure there was a good team spirit there, and we was all be the same age. The nights out were always a good turnout as well, so it was good times.
I'm sure there's plenty of stories for the nights out, but maybe not for an official podcast. You maybe need to get one of our sister shows on the go.
Did him and Joe both have the same sort of football philosophy then? Was it like, obviously we tried to play nice football at times and we were full of energy. Did both of them see the game the same way? Or was one of them have one style and the other one wanted to play the other way? Or was it both just combined?
Nah, they both got the same ideas, I think. But at the same time, I think they were still, when we first started, they were trying to see what shape and what system would suit us best. And then we went to the 3-5-2 and it just seemed to make us click. And we rarely changed away from that. That was the way we played, and it suited us all. And the two of them, to be fair to them, they made us feel like we could go and take on anybody. Might play Man United in that friendly, and they're telling us before we go, you couldn't beat them there. They've been lucky in their careers, go and beat them. We're like, time to believe in them. That's what they've done. They've sort of tried, because a lot of us have been released. They were trying to build our confidence back up, and both of them were good at doing that and telling us that we're good enough to go and play at this level or even higher. And all the boys took that on board, and it helped us. We played with confidence, and there wasn't any fear factor at that point with that team, so it was great.
What was the Manchester United friendly like? I mean, I can only begin to imagine being in the tunnel and you look across and there's Ruud van Nistelrooy and Edwin van der Sar and these icons of European and world football just standing there getting ready to go out, and you're taking them on head to head.
It was bizarre, but different. I remember that the first half they had sort of a second stringer, but still had like Darren Fletcher and it's like guys like Kleberson and sort of fringe. But Rio Ferdinand and Gerard Piqué played the first half, and that was their string, their second sort of reserve. So, and we got on at 1-0 at half time. Thought we're doing it right here, and then as you say, the second half, you're looking, and I was shattered. We've been chasing the ball the whole time, and the second team comes in, and you're like, oh no way. As I said, it was Van Nistelrooy, Rooney, Giggs, Scholes, and it was scary. And honestly, and at that time, you just realise you're like, these guys are on a different level. We didn't touch the ball for ages in that game, and we did touch it. It was like for 2 or 3 seconds, and then they'd be on you, and you'd give it away again, and you were just like, wow, this is like a completely different level to what we're used to. But what an experience it was to play against guys like that.
It must have been a shame that a Mr. Ronaldo wasn't lining up either.
I bet you were lucky, Eddie.
I think he said he was injured, but that was the last thing we did. I remember Rooney playing on my side, and I was like, just couldn't get near him. And he was playing at sort of 50%, and I'm knocking my pan and giving my best shot, and he's not even breaking sweat. And you're like, different level. I never realised how fast Van Nistelrooy was. I just thought he was a penalty box striker, and then he spun in behind him. We were like, oh my God, this guy's absolutely lightning, Scary.
I still swear he took a dive that day for the penalty as well, for the fourth.
Yeah.
I'm not that bitter, honest.
I think from that game as well, it was Van der Sar and Ji-Sung Park's debuts for Man United. What a place to get them at Broadwood.
Yeah, and I think that match, obviously, it was probably on like Man U TV, and given obviously like Ji-Sung Park, that would have been broadcast to obviously the full of the Asian continent, just because it's Man United and their global fan base. Like that was obviously a sign of things to come as the season would progress for yourself, Eddie, and obviously the boys. Touched upon it earlier, the League Cup match against Rangers at Ibrox, where we were 2-1 up and we were looking great, and quite frankly, we were well on top. We were the best team in the park. I think it took them to bring on Barry Ferguson and possibly one or two others to start edging the game. What do you remember from the match at Ibrox?
Remember losing the goal after I think it was 90 seconds. We went 1-0 down. You're thinking, oh no, this could be, because they had a good team at that time. It could have been 4 or 5, and you're like, oh no, let's just hang in. And then the more the game went on, the more comfortable we felt. I don't think Jarvie had too many saves to make. We were fairly comfortable, and we're causing the problems on the counter attack with the legs. And then, so when we went 2-1 up, I was playing left centre half that day, and I just felt so comfortable. Didn't feel they were causing us any bother at all, and it was just that ball in behind and a mistake for Jarvie, which gave him the goal. And you go into extra time, and obviously by that time our legs have gone and they've went on to win the game. But it's still, it was one of those ones that got away with, and we were close to doing that. We could be both Old Firm teams that season, 5 minutes away from it. So, but a great experience again.
What was said to Jarvie in the changing room after the game?
A repeatable version, preferably.
I'll be honest, he felt terrible. He was, honestly, I've never seen a guy look so down after the game. And we were trying to encourage him to come out for a couple of beers to forget about it, because he's a goalkeeper. It happens to all goalkeepers, they make mistakes. But he was, honestly, it's the most gutted I've seen any player after the game in that changing room. I just felt so bad for him. So we tried to come out for a few beers, but he just went straight in. He was not for coming, whereas I had a few pints to try and forget about it.
Boys, I see there's a good question here from Dom.
I was wondering
it was my next subject. I was.
Yeah,
so take away.
So what was the Challenge Cup final like against Ross County? For me, it was a cracking day seeing the amount of fans there, as you've said before. But from a player standpoint, what were you and the boys thinking?
Obviously, it's still a bit of a gripe that we felt we were the better team that day. A couple of refereeing decisions didn't help us at all. And it was what I think a game we should have won, and obviously it goes to penalties. But I remember just the atmosphere. I was all pulling up in the bus and seeing the amount of fans there that travelled up to Perth that day. It was again a great experience, but still one that we still speak about and thinking, imagine we could have won a trophy with that team, because we felt again comfortable. They scored for a set piece, and then obviously got sent off in the extra time, which didn't help. But I thought that was harsh as well. I think the referee was choking to do it, to be honest. And then we went to penalties and lost the game. It was a sick note, to be honest. It was a chance to win a trophy, and it just sort of slipped by us. But again, to see that many Clyde fans up there, it was definitely class. It was brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was. It was a fantastic day. It was a long and pretty painful journey back down from Perth, but at the same time, I think every Clyde fan was proud of the boys, because, as you said, we were by far the better team that day. I think their goal was, I could be wrong, it was with 5 minutes to go or so. It was very, very late in play, and as you say, it was a set piece. Ross County had quite a few big boys, and they had a few decent players in there. I think like the boy Gardine, who's still with them to this day. I think he was on loan at the time. I think Sean Higgins was possibly there. Obviously went on to play for ourselves amongst many other teams. So they had a good team, but again, testament to what we were able to do with that squad as we outplayed them. And that was without Dougie Emery. I think he was a last minute withdrawal from the team due to injury as well. So we were probably out with one of our kind of talisman.
As I said, when you compare Ross County's budget to our budget at that time, they were spending big money, taking players up to the Central Belt, up to the Highlands to try and push for SPL football. They're a good team at that time. But as I say, we more than matched them. As I say, we were so close to getting our hands on the trophy. And I think if things just were slightly different, we would have done that. But they're a good team with some decent players. Gary Irvin was playing on the right-hand side. That team that I was playing against. And they were a good team. But again, we felt that we probably deserved to win that day, but it just slipped by us.
Yeah, there was quite a few players out that day as well. Emery, Williams, Masterton, McGowan and Arbuckle, they were all pretty big players that season. Did that kind of change the way we looked to play the game, or were we still going with just putting players in the positions?
No, we set up the same way. The headache that I think Graham Roberts and Joe got was that he rested a couple of players the week before, and we beat Stranraer, I think 5-1. I think Roddy Hunter scored 3 or 4 goals.
Yeah.
And I think they were like, well, you need to play Roddy. He's just scored 4 goals. And he did play and he scored again. But I say, but guys that could step in, but I wouldn't say that disrupted the team or anything like that. I just say we played the same way we always play. A couple of boys came in, you could always rely on Roddy to score goals. And the ones that came in would do a job for us. But it just wasn't to be, which was frustrating.
Aye, so we've got a question from Andrew Rennie. I might hazard a guess and say I know what the answer to this will be, but what was the best Clyde result at your time at Clyde, Eddie?
I wonder.
I can answer that one there. Obviously the Celtic game. But there was a few with the that back at that time it was like we used to eat Partick all the time. If we were waiting for a derby, we'd take them on and we'd always have a chance of winning the game. And they were great as well. Games against Airdrie, we always knew we could fancy chances against them as well, another sort of derby. So there were just loads of good memories, to be honest. There's so many more good ones and bad ones. So obviously the Celtic one was the pinnacle, but with so many decent results that season and even the season before with good results. And so it was a really enjoyable time in my career.
Now that's probably quite a perfect link then into the main discussion, and I can't believe it's taken us 45 minutes to get to this point. But obviously we do need to discuss in great length the Celtic match. I think that's what we all really wanted to talk to you about, Eddie. Now, the pre-match build-up was Roy Keane. Was that a discussion in the dressing room? Was it a case of let's go and actually make this about Clyde Football Club rather than about Roy Keane?
Yeah, it was mentioned. Yeah, definitely was mentioned that, again, Graham Roberts and Joe were telling us that we're as good as them. We believed that. And it was mentioned that we were sort of being disregarded as these footballers that aren't very good, young, and Celtic were going to come over and Roy Keane's debut and just put us to one side. So we were all, sort of looking to prove a point and say that we can compete against these teams. So we'd just done it 2 months earlier at Ibrox, and that was sort of overlooked. It was never mentioned. I think at the time we were sitting 4th in the Championship. So we were a good team, but people just seen us as these young boys that have all been released and came into trials. So it sort of frustrated us a little bit, and we wanted to go out and show that we could actually play football and we were actually decent players.
Yourself and Craig Bryson were the two, obviously, only survivors from the match 12 months previous against Celtic when we didn't have such a positive result, shall we say. The match itself, what do you remember? Is it a bit of a blur, or can you remember most of it?
Nah, it's mostly a blur. You get little sort of snippets of it. I remember taking a whack in the head for Keane early doors with his knee, but it was accidental. But he thumped me in the back of the head. But he was sound. He apologised straight away. And the rest of it, just like a whirlwind. You were like, in the first half an hour, I was like, we're actually battering them here. And we should be 2 or 3 up. And the referee kept chopping off goals and making it more difficult, more and more frustrated and angry. And it was like, put the ball in the net. I'm like, is that one all right? Like, can we celebrate this one? And we were just like, honestly, we were just so motivated to go and prove a point that we were good enough to be on the pitch with these guys. And we weren't just sort of footballers that had just been released for some clubs, and we'd actually go and make ourselves a career in the game. I think that's what we had to prove to everybody.
Looking back in it, you must be thinking it was good that Stephen O'Donnell missed that penalty, because otherwise that corner would never have happened.
Still speak about that to Oddie. Still speak to him about that. But by the way, what a save it is! It's right in the corner.
It's an absolutely unbelievable save. It really is.
And as I said, we were lucky enough to get the goal straight after that, which gave us a big boost. Because if we'd missed the penalty and then never got a goal straight away, it could have been different. But we managed to get the goal straight after that, which was great.
I think, see that corner routine we did? Well, I think we meant it anyway, because I think we did it a few times that season where the ball was sort of zinged into the front post and there was a flick on. Was that something that was practiced in the training?
It was Joe Miller introduced it to us. He said he'd done it with Aberdeen and it got them a lot of goals. So we worked on it in training. I would take them from the right-hand side and clip it to the front post, and Stephen O'Donnell would take them from the other side and clip it, and we put the two centre-halves at the front post to try and get a flick in it. And it got Al Williams about 15, 16 goals that season, honestly, because he just stand the goal and just
stand the line now.
Because we've seen it before. Queen's Park have done it against Clyde over the years, and one season they scored a number of goals against us by just doing the exact same thing, and I don't know why every team doesn't do it.
Hey Danny, if you're watching, you know what to do. Now,
sorry, Paul. On the goal as well, Eddie, when you were watching the ball come down to unleash that wonder strike, did you have any idea Big John Hartson was making a beeline for you?
No. I was turning my back if I knew that.
Eyes focused on the ball then.
I just swung at it, and as I said, I could have tried that another 100 times and it wouldn't have came off, but thankfully that one did. So
was it one of the ones the second that left your boot that you knew it was in? Was it just one of those?
I knew I'd caught it well, but as you said, I hadn't scored a goal for I scored one for St Johnstone, and I went I think it was 80 games at Clyde I hadn't scored, and I'd been hitting the post and I'd been hitting ones past the post, and I knew I'd caught a sweep. I thought, there's no chance of me scoring here. I've not scored. I never score. And then to see it actually nestle and hit the net, it was I was probably as surprised as anybody else that it was me that scored it. It was, as I said, I didn't get many goals, but that one I'll obviously keep for a while.
Three goals you got, if you want me to remind you again.
Oh, absolutely. You also got an assist, Eddie. And I think that's a fact that everyone seems to forget, is that you did get the assist for Bryso's goal.
Should have been two. One get chopped off.
I don't know, got chopped off. No, I remember that the cross that we got a break of the ball, I think odd track play and singing it come off somewhere, and it was spinning just perfect for me to chuck in the box. And so I've just put in that area. And obviously, Boris got a rush of ball to the heat and came running out to try and get it, and Clark, his own player. And Bryson just knocked it in. So it was good to get an assist as well. But I think everybody in that team that day was just playing to the best, and you couldn't pick out anyone saying that give the extra credit. The whole team was different class that day.
So what was the half-time team talk like? Sorry, what was the half-time team talk like? And was it hard not to come out in the second half and sort of just look at the clock the whole time, just waiting for the time to run down?
The half-time team talk was very much everyone sit down, shut up and calm down. Pretty much, because we obviously knew we'd done well, but the old firm usually come back in games like that after 2-0 down at half-time. Yeah. You know they're going to come at you. So that was just, they were making sure that we were all still focused and our heads weren't in the clouds, and we were all aware of that was a good Celtic team that we were playing against. So if we did take our eye off the ball, they could score 2 or 3 goals in 10-15 minutes, and then you're back to square one. So it was very much sit down and shut up and listen. This is what's happened in the second half, pretty much. So and thankfully it worked.
Were you watching the clock at all second half, or were you just concentrated in the game?
No, really, because again we felt comfortable. We could have scored a third just after half time, I think it was. And after that, I can't remember Pete Cherry having to make too many saves, or them putting us under pressure, or the goal and clearances. We were just so well set up that it was hard to break down, and we felt quite comfortable. Obviously, they scored with sort of 7 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go. But even then, I don't think they had another chance after that. We just defended our box so well and made it really difficult for them. And I can't really remember having to look at the clock and going, like, when's this over? Because I sort of felt that we were so well organised that we weren't going to concede a goal.
I think most Clyde fans remember looking at the clock a lot.
Aye.
I think it's going through my mind as well at one point whether you want the money for a replay or you'll take the win.
I think that was spoke about with the chairman. I think he was wanting a replay. we was the only one hanging on mind, and that was getting the win.
Yeah.
So there's a wee question for Dom Jack here. When you come out from half time, how do you feel not seeing Douay? Are you a bit gutted?
He got stitched up. Honestly, I don't think he obviously had a poor first half, but it could have been anybody except for Celtic that got taken off. But he was obviously the scapegoat, because they could have took anybody off. But he was the guy that they made the sort of fall guy. I can't remember who they brought on or what they done. To be honest, we were just
Adam Virgo, I think, that replaced him.
Was it? Yeah. But no, we were focused on ourselves. We, to be honest, I wouldn't even knew that he'd went off at half time. We were concentrating on what we were doing rather than what Celtic were doing.
One thing that I think you mentioned, Peter Cherry. Now, see, when you think of the big cup shocks over the years, north, south of the border, wherever really, normally it does take that goalkeeper and the underdog to have an absolute day and a half. They're on one, nothing gets past them. Peter Cherry is probably the only one in that team that gets a 6 out of 10, and it was just because he wasn't busy. It wasn't because he played poorly. He just didn't have anything to do. And when you think about that, we were playing Celtic, the team that went on to win the league that year in the top flight of Scotland. That's just mental to think.
Aye, that is, as I said, it was surprising how comfortable it was for us, and it probably could have been a more convincing victory. And as I said, that Celtic team were a really good team at the time, and they went on to win the league. And I think one of the biggest shocks was that how it wasn't a smash and grab. It wasn't like we'd hit them on the break all the time. We were actually, cutting them open at times and giving them real problems. So, as I said, when people watch the game back and see that it was an upset, it wasn't like we were just sitting in and waiting to hit them on the break. We actually went and had a go at them. As I said, that was the way we played, and we weren't going to change it because it was Celtic.
Yeah, some of the comments are mentioning that the score should have been 5-1. Martin Brun, 5-1 with a particularly angry looking emoji. I think there was a few others, wasn't there? Yeah, Andrew Rennie, do you think, Eddie, it should have been Clyde 5, Celtic 1? Now, the disallowed goals, I think Tom Brighton's in particular, there is no argument in anyone's mind. I think Craig Thompson, who was the referee again? Sorry, it wasn't Craig Thompson. Stuart Clark.
I can't remember who it was.
Stuart Clark, Kenny Clark.
Kenny Clark, yeah.
Kenny Clark, yeah.
Nobody remembers the referee's name.
Kenny Clark.
I think was it after he said Tom Brighton, we had him on, and he said that he actually got an apology from him after when the referee watched it back and went, yeah, should never have disallowed that.
But even Dewey should have been. I don't know why he only got yellow carded as well. He should have been at 10 men as well when Tam was away. He pulled his jersey back and he leave my yellow. So that's. Growing up watching Hibs, playing the old firm, you're never going to get too much from the referees. So you just have to keep your head down and get on with it. But as I said, it probably could have been 4-5-1 that day, which is mad that I'm actually saying that, but that was sort of the way the game went. I think they just got a surprise of aggressive we were and how we didn't just sit in and we just went after them from the first whistle.
Did you ever come up against Celtic again in your career after that?
Oh, aye, they've hammered me a few times since then. Like.
Do you think they just saw you and went, "Oh, here we go, right? This boy's getting it."
I think I've got beat off them 4-1 was at Rayfovers, 3-0 at Rayfovers. They beat us 5-0 the year before at Clyde. So I've had a few tankings off the Old Firm in my career. I've had it both sides.
Now, wary of time, gents. Obviously, I could just sit and talk about that game all night, Eddie, and obviously that goal. Just before we finish up, do you have a kind of final word just for the Clyde fans watching? I'm sure they've enjoyed it as much as we have, reminiscing of your time at Clyde.
I just to thank them for making me feel welcome as soon as I joined the club. As I said, my first season, I don't think I played to the best that I can, but they always stuck behind me. And it would just be great to see them back up where they should be in the Championship at least. Get that sort of back up that end of the table where, with the fan base they've got and the loyal set of fans they've got, that's where they should be. So just hopefully see them back up where they belong soon.
Yeah, hopefully after all the COVID restrictions are over, we can get you down to the area again and get chatting to the fans. It was great to have you and all the other boys down as well.
Aye, great. As I said, I always enjoy coming back and catching up with old faces and the social side as well, seeing all the lads as well, and getting a couple of beers and talking about football. What's not to like?
Exactly, Eddie. Now, obviously, for yourself, still playing with the Shire, good luck, hopefully, once football does resume, unless, of course, you do come up against Clyde, in which case we're going to have to put all this legendary status to one side for 90 minutes. So, thank you again for your time, Eddie. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. And with that, Boise, Dino, thank you for your time also. And for all you commenting, which has been extremely busy, thank you as well for getting involved. And until next week, come on the Bully Wee.
On the Clyde.